Yo, how are you doing, folks? Welcome to episode 95 of the Simpa Life Podcast. We are 5 away from our first century, the first of many. You're going to see me hit 1,000 because, frankly, I've got plenty of shit to say. And I keep finding more people to bump into to have these conversations with, two of which you are seeing on the other side of the camera right now, but I'm not going to introduce them right now because I wanted to talk some shit with y'all. It's the end of summer. As I said last week, we're now moving into, I suppose, Croptober. More important for, I suppose, our guests than us in the UK because we're not necessarily limited to sort of climate in terms of the way that we cultivate, especially sort of outdoors. I've seen quite a lot of really successful guerrilla growers coming down this year. Keep it up, people. I want to see more of that on Instagram. I want to see more just taking back the land. You know what I mean? Seeds and water. We don't really need much more than that. We can overgrow that system. So I want to see more pictures. Tag us, send us them. Keep it cooking. Right, today's guests, terrible segue there, but whatever, we're moving on anyway. Today's guests are two brothers from Mendocino County in California, the world famous Mendocino County, who started making music together in 2007 and having released their first album in 2009, have been playing together since as the band Mendo Dope Boys. They are famed for their reggae hip hop sound, growing cannabis trees. I say trees because wait till you see the size of some of these. I'll superimpose some images later on, folks, so you can see them. And for being champions of cannabis farmers, grow your own, and cannabis culture. They are Old E and Bleezy. I can't even say Old E and Bleezy B. How you doing, guys?
Yeah, good, brother. How you doing? We're doing really good.
I'm good.
Baking right now.
Yeah.
First sesh of the morning.
Nice. I mean, we couldn't quite have the same here in the UK this time of year, waking and baking outside and it looking so lovely. Yeah, California seems to be perpetual sunshine. I mean, it is seen, especially in the global cannabis culture, as a hub and a mecca for cannabis cultivation. And I suppose you guys we're not just in the music side of it, but in the culture side of it for decades now. So actually, before I was going to just jump in to get your opinion of it, I suppose actually let's go back and let's talk about founding the band. How did that come to be? Obviously, I know you've known each other because you were brought up together, being brothers. But what kind of inspired you and influenced you to start making music together?
Oh man, I guess just being big on music in general. You know, we always liked listening to a lot of music growing up. Influenced by a lot of Bay Area music up here in Northern California. A lot of independent kind of artists and. Just really loved music, was into art and drawing and different stuff, started getting into poem writing, and that kind of evolved into writing music and like realizing, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. Like I really enjoyed writing and figuring out rhymes and talking about things. And over the first couple of years of freestyling with friends and just playing around, having fun with it, Bleezy, he started playing around with making beats and started twiddling with things and making noises on old programs. And from there, like it really just started evolving into, well, okay, like this is really fun creating music. And we had an opportunity to meet with someone that we had looked up to for a long time growing up, Reek Daddy out of Vallejo, California, the Crest side. He was on NOYB Records. He was a gangster rapper from Vallejo. This is like the old school music that we grew up on was really a lot of hardcore stuff, a lot of pimp rappers and drug dealer rappers, like regular a lot of city rap, gangster rap stuff we grew up listening to. Mac Dre, Tupac, Andre Nicotina, Brother Lynch, all kind of these kind of cats that we really were influenced by at the beginning. And we were able to meet up with Reek Daddy and through cannabis. That's what actually connected us. Was one of our buddies ran into him at a gas station, hooked him up with some weed, some CDs, and was like,
wow.
Like, man, hit me up with some of that tree that you guys have. And he came home to tell us, and at first we were like, man, we're like, that's so dope, dude, and you sure it was the real Reek? And he's had the posters and the CDs. We're like, wow, you really did meet Reek. And he's like, yeah, he said come through sometime, bring some weed. And we're like, yeah, I bet he did. Like, this fool's a gangster rapper. Like, I don't know if we want to bring bags of herb up here in the hood. We already knew there's like out here, there's a lot of robberies and a lot of people getting jacked throughout the beginning of our life and the beginning of the weed game when we got into it. So we were just very suspicious about going over there and meeting up with him in person and stuff, like about like a weed kind of meeting or whatever, bringing weed to sell or something. But we did end up going over there, and he was just so cool. The first time we met him, like, even this is so funny, I always remember the first time we went to his house, we brought our bong and we were smoking out the bong, and we forgot our bong at his house. And we're like, oh, that's gone. He lived in the hood too, like super crazy neighborhood. It was kind of dangerous to get to his neighborhood. It was like a one way in, one way out situation. A lot of people would tell us like, be careful when you go over there. It's a crazy part of town.
Yeah.
But we left our bong there right at his house, and he kept it safe for us. He's like, I got your bong. When you guys come back up, grab it. And we're like, no way, dude. That is so cool. So it showed us right there. It was like, okay, this guy is like, he's like a cool dude. He's not he's not gonna rip us off.
He's not shiesty. Like on the first meeting, you know, like, and like I wasn't even there for, I think, the first few times that my brother and a couple of his buddies were going up, you know, to smoke and bring him weed and do some first, actually, like getting them hooked up with some weed. And at the time, you know, me and a couple of my friends were just like freestyle rapping. We had a small microphone in our closet, you know, doing really beginning of the day stuff, you know, on a little laptop. And I was like, I wonder if Reek would be down to like record a song with us. Like in my mind, I was like, it would be so insane, like how that would be so crazy, because we've been listening to him for so long, and this is at the beginning of us even making music. So it was like a very far-fetched thing that I didn't know if it would happen. But since we had his number, you know, we gave him a call one day, and I was like, seeing if maybe when we come up there next time we could record a song. And he's like, I didn't know y'all did music. He's like, yeah, let's do it. So I was like, okay. It was like, oh wow, this is gonna be intense. Like, so we went up there with me, Bleezy, a couple of our other friends, and went in the studio with him in his bedroom studio. We were smoking out, and he's like, all right, let me see what you guys got. And just really heart racing, really nervous as hell, really young, just like, okay, let's do something, kind of freestyle a little rap. And he's like, okay, it's like that, let's get it. And turned on a beat, and boom, we recorded the first song together. And like after that day, after smoking, he's like, all right, when y'all coming back up to record more? And it was like, no way, like for real, like wow, I did not expect that. You know, it was like just dreaming of being able to record one song with him, sit in the room with him and watch him record was epic, you know?
Yeah, he was like the first person we kind of saw record at the next professional level than us. He had his bedroom studio. He had the whole Pro Tools set up. He had beats that he was making too. So it was like, damn, this is super cool to see, like the next step up of what you're supposed to do. And like songwriting in general, like he was really good writer. The way that he wrote his stuff was very like bar after bar, very organized way of writing, and not like semi-simplistic way of writing, but he was just so good at his one-liners and talking shit. He could say so many things, dude. Just the most raw rapper. Like whoever, like whatever gangster rappers out there, he was just as raw or more raw, and he's just more so real too. There's nothing fake about anything that he also would say. So it was really cool to kind of like hang out with and be like get to be real good friends with one of the most gangster rappers that's ever rapped, really.
Yeah, see such a chill side of him, of being, you know, just smoking out, like vibing over this plant, like getting high and making music. It was so fun. And like for me at the time, you know, of being very at the beginning of things, like I didn't know too much about writing like bars and how long a verse was supposed to be and the formulation of making an actual song. So it was really cool being able to learn firsthand from him working on that. And right away, he's like, y'all the NOYB boys, you know, like y'all are going to be riding with me on the label. Like he had this independent NOYB records label, which was None of Your Business Records. So our very first underground album came out in 2007. And during these first recordings of the songs, he's like, y'all got to have your rap names, you know, and y'all, what's your name gonna be? Like, what's your guys' thing gonna be? And we're like, I don't know really yet. It's hard to say. Like,
and Old E was always very little. Like he smoked weed at a very young age, and it did for sure stun his growth. He was super short.
I was always a shorty, and I was always hanging out with him. You know, Bleezy's 2 years older than me, so I was always hanging out with that crowd, like a couple years above me. So I was always the young one and the short one. So they always called me Little E in school. We started rapping. I was like, I don't really want to be called Little E for the rap. And Reek Daddy is like, he came up with the name right there. He's like, y'all, you can be Old E. And he was like, somehow he popped off with Brian.
Yeah, what he just said. I don't remember how he said it, but yeah, he came up with Bleezy, and I'm like, that's dope, dude. I like Bleezy. I'll stick with Bleezy.
And then nice. He's like, for group name, man. He's like, y'all from Mendo, y'all got the dope. It was like, damn, like that. Like he was so off the top like that. Reek was so good at
at like just freestyling and coming up with ideas, and like he had a crazy brain. And for him to just like pop off like that so quick and just be like, boom, connect the two with us, and it just boom, the seed was planted, and it was like, okay, we're Mendo dope. It's like, here we go. And then after that, like our first real album came out in 2009, and that was under NOYB Records, and that was like our first album that actually went like on a real distribution thing with the company and went like nationwide, and our CD was actually in stores, and it was like, oh my God, we did it. Like we made it to actually our seat. We can go to the store and see our CD. Like it was insane. It was so crazy. And we were learning so much still at that time. And the type of music that we were doing, you know, being so influenced by these gangster rappers and kind of city kind of stuff. Like that was more the music that we were focused on for a long time, even though we were dabbling into the grow side, and we were always big on smoking, but at that time we didn't have too much of an opportunity to grow like our own big gardens and like really get in fully into the ganja farming side. But over the next couple years, when we really started to get into growing more, we started to intertwine our music and really talk about what we were doing and like bring our life into what we were doing, instead of how much we were influenced by this other side of the game. It was like, okay, now let's take this and bring it into what we've learned, and now let's show what we do, and try to like go as deep as we can into the into the cannabis culture, with like also being influenced with like artists like Be Real, you know, Cypress Hill and Cottonmouth Kings, people that have been rapping about weed and talking about smoking out and partying and all this stuff. Like we just wanted to get more into the grow side, and like what we were doing, you know, we've been living up here in the mountains for a long time and growing up around other ganja farmers and working on the farm, trimming and seeing all this happen. So once we started getting into it, being involved in the culture more, and like, okay, like let's start putting this together, and this is going to be our thing. Like we're going to be like the cannabis culture side. We're going to be like really speaking for the ganja farmers. And like we felt like it was cool because it was a lane that no one else was really doing or hadn't done yet. You know, everyone was talking about weed and representing it and smoking it, but there wasn't much talk about the grow side and what people were doing up in the hills to really get this thing going. So it's really trippy how it evolved from starting out listening to the gangster rap, meeting these guys, giving us a chance to get into the music game, and then find ourselves and really represent what we do and like put it out in this cannabis culture style.
Wow, yeah, quite an evolution. You answered quite a few of my questions. So as you were going there, that was a real sort of concise history of the evolution. So how early would you say you kind of switched into being focused on the cannabis culture in terms of your lyrics and in terms of the musical structure itself? Because obviously from your later albums, it is entirely representative of the culture. I mean, you did the Live in the Gardens album. Sorry, there's a giant fly in here that keeps buzzing around, so I keep swatting at the air. Yeah, so obviously, was it a conscious thing? Did you kind of go like, we want to put more into this, or did you feel like it was sort of a natural progression? Because I suppose during the time frame, it was kind of before Washington or Colorado, so there wasn't really any legal scene in the States yet. So it was still obviously, I imagine, quite risky to go, hey, we grow cannabis, we love cannabis, you know?
Yeah, it was forever. You know, we grew up around everyone saying, don't say nothing, don't tell no one nothing, and we were quiet for the first couple of years, but as it kept going too, like Reek, when we came to Reek's one day, he told us, he said, you guys have done music with everyone that we grew, that like all his homies, like all the rappers from the Bay and all the people that we wanted to do music with, and he's like, you guys are you should do something different. He's like, you can do other stuff. He's like, you've done this now. He's like, go figure out your next step or whatever. Kind of at the time we're just smoking with him, and we're like, wow, what is he talking about? We're having fun doing all this stuff. And then one of his other homies was there, Mr. Skrills, and he was kind of telling us what he was kind of trying to say and stuff, and kind of like explained it to us, and we're like, okay. And at that time was also when we were starting to go to, or I was starting to go for sure to like Reggae on the River and watching like Damian Marley and Sizzla and Barrington Levy and all these old school OG like reggae artists. And the concerts were so fun too at reggae festivals and concerts like that. Such a good vibe and so much weed. Everything was like right up our alley. So we're like, okay, we want to start just trying to see if we can do music with some reggae people. And then that also was right around the same time when we kind of met Sub Cool, and we were looking up to Sub for a while. So when we met Sub in person and stuff, it was like super eye-opening too, because he was so about blasting the weed and just talking about it and teaching people as much as possible. So then being around him for a little bit started getting us kind of seeing that side of things about really promoting weed and not being scared to do it. And then right around that same time, I was ended up being like 2013 when he was starting to come to our house and film with us at the house. And then that's the year we got raided. So then after the raid and being homies with Sub and Reek, we're still friends with Reek, and going through everything and figuring out our shit was at the same time when we were just went full throttle with the weed stuff. And just like the cops kind of like pushed us into really just saying, fuck it, we already got busted now. And they want us to like grow a very small amount because we grow such big plants. They said we could only grow 6. Like if they catch us with more than 6 plants, then we're going to be in big trouble. And we're like, we could either just go in the mountains and make money in the hills, or we could just do 6 and like hang out with Sub and promote and film everything we do and really make the music more of our life and more serious, not just focusing on the music for fun and the weed for like our living and stuff. So that right around that time we got like our music business. We started doing all of like the Planters of the Trees CD.
Yep.
And finishing that Planters of the Trees CD off, and that ended up being like one of our best selling, biggest CDs ever. And so many people like had so much feedback about it. We never really got a lot of feedback with our other music. We had friends that listened to it, but no one was super stoked on it. It's cool. It's got some cool stuff, but when we started being more positive and really focusing on the weed, it was a huge circle of people that were really into it, and it just made us really focus in on that and dial that in more. It was just the gangster rap stuff. We still have a lot of hard beats and a lot of different people that we work with that are like Sally Cell. We got Sally Cell on a song right now. He's another rapper from the Bay that we've always wanted to work with. But it's just really cool seeing how the positive music ended up being like where we're supposed to be, not so negative.
Yeah, we really started switching up the content of our like actual like lyrics and like the message that we were putting out. I remember it was even like the year before Planters of the Trees, like in 2012, like we were on a mission for a long time. Once we got out of high school, we were recording music every day, and like after meeting with Reek, we were trying to perfect our craft, like just recording and making new songs. So we had hundreds of songs that we were sitting on in our catalog, and we decided like we want to put out like an album every month. Like in 2012, when we were on a different label before we started our own independent, fully having our own catalog, we dropped a CD every month in 2012. So we dropped 12 albums. Some stuff we were recording new on the spot for certain albums, and some we were just kind of piecing together and pulling songs like, oh, this one feels like it fits this and this fits this. One of the albums that we did was called Positive Vibes, and that was one that really that was like our transition of like songs that we recorded that were totally different than what we were doing before on that more raw street style gangster rap stuff, like where we were like, all right, let's like really talk about some really super positive things and like switch things up totally, just like and see how it goes for this project. And that was one of the projects where, like Bleezy was saying, like we got so much different feedback than what we had ever got before from our music. It really all of a sudden it was like, whoa, instead of this like tight group of our homies and people listening, now it just expanded to these new people that are like, whoa, this song is really cool, and like I love this album. And it was like, okay, this is starting to catch on and do something different. And even like it wasn't super intertwined with weed on that time. It was just really positive kind of lyrics. And then once we got into the next year with, working with Sub and farming more ourselves, it was like once we recorded the Planters of the Trees album, started working with reggae artists and these branching out to this whole different scene, it was a world of difference that just like, okay, this is our lane right here. Like Reek wanted us to find. We were influenced by this, worked with them. Now let's really do our thing and intertwine and bring this group together and merge it with that group and like just make it bigger. And that's exactly what started to happen. And it was so cool to see it. And it was like, okay, like this is our calling. Let's go all the way. This is cannabis culture music. This is a a new strain of music, we started calling it. You know, no one was doing this, so and we just went all out. And from then on, yeah, we really, our stuff is, you know, fully 90% focused all around the plant, and that's the kind of music that we make.
Yeah, it's, as you say, you literally have kind of created your own genre, because, as you say, people have been referencing cannabis for forever. I mean, you got like Willie Nelson, who's literally 1 billion years old, and everyone that's come since, really. And you've got kind of two different types. If you got the people that kind of reference for clout, and it's, I smoke this, I do this, and it's an ego thing. And then there is kind of what you guys have really pushed, and I hope to see more artists kind of meet that same inspiration in the same cycle that you have with Reek and others, that they can then be like, move into that new space and populate it more with artists that are going to preach truth about the plant. Because yeah, it's all well and good that you smoke whatever, that's your desire, your prerogative, how much you want to consume. That's not a measure of whether I should respect you or not. But what you know about the plant and what you do for the culture, that will definitely earn my respect. And I think we're seeing more of that. So one of the questions actually I really did want to specifically ask you guys is something that I wrote an article or a blog about a couple of years ago. When Jay-Z, his Rock Nation, they merged into a SPAC, special acquisition company deal, and they basically announced that everyone on his record label was going to get a weed deal. So there was going to be like Alicia Keys, cannabis, and all of this. And I just want to get your opinions as being musicians and artists, and obviously we'll move on to what you're doing in terms of the business side of things shortly. But your opinion on how you've grown through that culture and you've built that from the dark days of prohibition, obviously you were saying with the violence and everything else, and then going on that organic journey of transition from gangster rap, which was quite representative of the culture, because you had to be aggressive, you had to be, you know, masculine and macho and whatever to protect your crop, to protect your bit, your spot. And obviously that's now evolved, but in some ways parts of the music haven't. And I just don't want to see, I mean, Redman, I think it was, of all people, I say of all people, he came out, I think, earlier in the year, and he made a comment that was picked up by some TMZ or whatever, saying, yeah, what the fuck's the Jay-Z ever done for weed? You know what I mean? And it's kind of right. Whereas you got Redman, Method Man, you got Wu-Tang, any of these, yeah, there's still obviously a lot of gangster rap influence in Wu-Tang, but again, with what the messaging was trying to be around what the plant can be, was always there. It was never spoke of as an abusive tool, you know what I mean, in terms of the way that the music was structured. So they always still respected the plant, even if some people may have an issue with the lyrics and the philosophies. I personally don't, but each to their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it sucks for sure to see how easy it is for these people with money, like a Jay-Z type or someone like that. It's so easy for them to make a brand and put shit on the streets and kind of take shelf space from real people. It sucks also, but they're gonna do that, you know. They do it to alcohol, they do it to everyone. Musicians are real good about getting their name on everything.
Yeah.
Adidas shoes, you know, Run DMC and whatever.
Yeah.
Everyone's done major hustles with that, and so weed's the next thing. What sucks that I see all the time that I just don't understand, like, there's a lot of companies that are big that have a lot of money that can do a lot of stuff, and they grow poopy weed. Why don't they ever find real people? I think if someone had this big company actually hired 5 real dudes that that they've been around, and these are the guys now that I want to be on my team to push, that would help their company so much. And it would help the real people a lot also, and what those people might even do for their friends once they're connected with something that kind of big like that. So it's so funny, who is getting hired for all these corporate non-weed people in the weed game? There's no one that's a real OG weed person that I've seen get almost, you say, signed. They should be getting signed to some of these big companies.
It should almost be the image that just popped into my head there was Chappelle's show and the race draft. And it should be, so the company, and then you've got, the best growers, and it won't be that kind of celebrity, it'd be that kind, because there are some people that are wizards that I've met. I mean, I've been lucky enough to travel around America, around Canada a little bit. I've been to a place like Morocco and Spain and Amsterdam, and I've seen obviously a lot of different growers, and some people just have a magic touch they can explain, and they're humble and they're simple and they'll tell you everything they've done, but there's still something else they have to it. And that you can't necessarily teach that. You can obviously apprentice in it and get different variant of that skill set, as it were. But each of us are so unique with the combination of skills we've acquired. And I think the States are slightly less bad as Canada right now, because they just effectively locked everybody out that previously did anything. You ran a dispensary, you were whatever, you got locked out. They're now slowly coming around to, I think Remo called it farm to table. So they're kind of cutting out the government a bit and now allowing more competition. And organically, that'll mean that the legacy people, I think a lot of people are kind of like my mentality, which is, well, fuck you. No, I don't want to work for you. You should be lucky enough to invest in us. And it should be much more of a reciprocal partnership, in that they have the money and the business experience, but they don't know our culture. They don't know our history. And frankly, I think I called it when I was talking to Steve D'Angelo, one of the D'Angelos, the fuckability variable or the fuck you variable. And it's just within us that they can spend all their money and do it. And we still just go, nah. Nah, there's a company in Canada, in Australia I was reading about, and they, I don't know how much they initially put into their pot, but they collapsed with $7 million in debt, having only sold $5,000 worth of product.
Oh my God! In Australia?
In Australia, yeah. Oh, it's an insanity. I mean, I can't. The economics of the dealers, vendors, the growers, the people that I operate and work with every day, their margins are 5-10% of loss, and those losses are down to post office, are down to police, are down to whatever. Yet when I was talking again Steve D'Angelo, he was talking about Canada. We actually didn't even reference last year's numbers. It was 480 something million grams went in the bin.
Wow. Yeah.
It's like, what the hell? 80% of their product couldn't go to sale.
I was talking to him about that. I was like, oh my God. And what's crazy too, besides they're just blowing their money like crazy, they're wasting so much of our water, dude. Think how much water they're wasting.
And energy as well, because again, they don't care about it. And not only do they not care about it, they've almost designed a system where you're not supposed to. I mean, I was in I'm not going to name which farm it was, maybe name me off the record. I was in a farm in Mendocino, a small community one run by a couple of guys, and we stood in their 2-tier growing room, and I just saw this mound when we kind of walked down. I went, what the hell's this? And he went, oh, that's sticks and stems. And I went, have you ever heard of graphene? Have you ever heard of it? And I just listed off all of the industrial potential benefits for cannabis from sticks and stems. And he just got redder and redder and redder. And I was like, what's up, man? He's like, my license bans me from touching that shit. I'm a flower farmer. I grow cannabis for the flowers. The rest of it has to be destroyed or mulched, or I can't move into industrial application. Otherwise, I'd need a separate license. And if I got that license, they wouldn't give me the flower license. So that means that there's people in California and all over America growing cannabis for fiber and then destroying the flower, and then cannabis growing it for flower and destroying the fiber. Yeah, and it's again the wastage within this is an insanity, but they're so desperate to sanitize and homogenize and bring into the fold our culture, into their way of operating, that neoliberalist capital way of operating. But the plant itself, I mean, you guys know as growers, if you overly bank on your plant, she'll fuck you up. She'll hear me. She'll do something. If you're already counting those pennies before it's done, man, she'll hear you. She'll hear you in the grow room and go, yeah, fuck you. And just trigger those bananas and just self-pollinate. There's something in the plant that she knows. And I've been talking about it for a while with a few friends actually here, because we have a big problem with Albanian nationals that have just completely owned the cannabis scene. They are selling Star Dog and Amnesia Haze, grown in very questionable mediums, but the price of it is nearly 50% cheaper than any of the home grow industry. So in a few years, they've completely taken over it. But people are talking about when they smoke it, they get like headaches or they get like bad feelings. And I think obviously there's the nutrients and whatever one side of it, but I genuinely think there's something in the plant that I don't want to say just love, but there's something more to it that I know that from being a grower myself, that mine always, no offense to anybody out there who's weed, I've tried, mine always seems to taste better because of the effort, the energy, and I know what's in it. And it means more to me. It means infinitely more to me than buying or exchanging or being gifted other flowers.
Yeah, it's super true. The flower sucks up the vibe. It puts it into itself just like it would a nutrient. The music, it puts everything gets trapped into the flower. Yeah, there's so much vibes. It's like we're not working with the Green Chalk Farms guy anymore. There's a big
breakup that we had last year with the guy that we were working with the permitted farms and stuff. But he grows really good flower, and he puts a lot of great energy into his flower. And when he competes and enters in cups, he wins almost all the time. He's in the top 3 in every cup he's ever entered. And and the weed's special, but it's also, there's a vibe to it that's you could tell when you smoke other people's stuff, like you're saying. There's something that you just doesn't click. It's like it could maybe taste okay, but it's just not like good to you. It's not good for your body in the same time as it is as the high.
It's like the plant is way more alive than people think about it. Like how much this plant is really soaking in everything that's happening around it, everything that is growing in, the people that are growing it, the surroundings, what's happening with it. Like that all comes to play for sure. I definitely, we highly believe in the vibes and the energy that goes into growing cannabis that has an effect on the final actual product, you know?
Yeah, I think that's partly why then we're seeing what we're seeing in Canada. I think that's partly what we're seeing with certain other legal regions that are popping up now, is that the people that are getting involved are frankly the prohibitionists. They were the people that before the law change were like, oh, you send them to jail, kick them out of school, ruin their lives, take the kids away. And now all of a sudden they're going, wait, how much can I make from this? I'd like to invest in this company here now, please. And we've just seen this huge transition, yet they've brought over this stigma and this kind of almost a loathing of cannabis consumers. I went to a thing in the UK called Cannabis Europa, and it is 600 quid a ticket. I didn't pay the fucking money. You didn't have it, wouldn't have it to get in. But basically almost minimum. And it's just a bunch of dudes in suits, and it's 2 days of investment. And they talk the talk of, oh, we're here for the patients. But then every other sentence is our projected profits, our market share. And it's those individuals, they would then walk out of there and they would go and they were smoking cigarettes and drinking beer. And there was me and maybe 2 other people smoking joints at this event. Yeah. And we would sort of huddle together in one area, and people would come out and smell weed and still have like an offended look on their face. And I'm like, you own a cannabis company. Why are you looking at me like that? Do you know what I mean? And it's more and more of those people are taking over this sort of space. And because of their prejudice, they're looking at the cannabis culture and still almost like, oh, you druggies, you wrong-uns, you bad people. But they want to learn enough of our culture to sell it back to us. It's very odd time that we're in our history, really.
It's weird, yeah. It's like crazy. They don't want to be part of the real culture. They just want to take from the culture. They just want to see. They just want the best side of it. They don't want to. They don't want to help anyone really. It's just like we see the money side of it. That's what it comes down to. Yeah, it's like you're saying. It's the profit shares, the margins of like, yeah, how much money can we make? And it's not really about growing it the best way or the cleanest way to really help as much people as we can. It's like how many people can buy this at this price to get us this much money.
Yeah. It's that war for margins. We're seeing what was Colombia, I think 0.05 cents a gram. And that's all they're doing. So it started with, I think in a lot of ways, Cali was quite late to the scene because obviously your Prop, was it 215 came first? Yeah. Was that the, yeah. So 215 kind of secured a market and set off an idea that eventually led to Washington, Colorado, and that started the snowball of the new wave of legalization. But it was sort of kind of protected from what's come next of this. It's a co-option. That's the only way to describe it. They're trying to put our culture back into the mainstream rather than allowing us to have pride in our own identifiable culture. Do you know what I mean? It's weird that we've seen this quite heavily with the co-option of gay pride, actually, with police vehicles. I don't know if they do in America, but in the UK during Pride Week, the vehicles have rainbows on. These are police vehicles. Bear in mind the history of LGBTQ and the struggle of their culture started with Stonewall, effectively, when it really went mainstream. And that was the police attacking gays, gay people, queer people. And now then 40 odd years later, suddenly the police vehicles are plastering and they're the symbol of this culture. It's, I mean, what, in 10 years, are we going to see cop cars during 420 are going to have cannabis leaves on? But they'll still then be arresting us and still using obscure laws to prejudice certain cannabis consumers. We won't just be protected as being all of the cannabis consumers. So I think, like, to get back to my earlier point, I think the way California's come on late with its 64 has basically just meant that the legacy people were happy. Do you know what I mean? 215 was working because it was so loose and obscure that your doctor would almost coach you through it. You'd pay you $100, you'd sit there, he'd go, how's your back? Or if you miss that cue, how do you sleep? All right, you missed that one. Do you lift heavy objects at work? And he'd coach you, how's your eyesight? And he'd basically coach you into, you just, oh, yes, well, you benefit. And that system kind of worked. And it wasn't perfect at all, but it allowed discretion. It allowed people like Eddie Lepp and that to build mass gardens and obviously the work that Dennis Perrin and others did to allow mass access to the populations that needed it without that corporate side of it. Now the corporate side has come into it. As we were saying before, that I think that most of the legacy people are just so full of angst and just fuck you that they don't want to participate in it.
Yeah, it's a huge part of it. Like, there's a lot of people up here that never got their permits this whole time, and they've just been doing their thing still, that they didn't want to even be a part of it. For us, we knew that this was going to happen. We knew that weed was going to go legal. We knew it wasn't going to be super cool. Like, they're just going to let us to continue to do our thing. So we've been like trying to figure out how to survive in the new age world and shit with the weed, and it's tough as hell. And like, it's crazy how much better it was when the people figured it out themselves and we made our own system that worked. It's like at big concerts when they have food vendors and people selling drugs and whatever, they have a underground system that we just figure out by ourselves. We don't need a organized person to tell us what to do, and it works so much better. And you see so many people just struggling right now, and there's only a few people that are climbing. There's like very few companies that are making profits that are going up while everyone else is going down, even though a lot of companies are purposely losing money, also. So it's like they like to lose money for taxes and write-off situations and all kinds of things. So it's really turned into such a crazy business. The business of it's insane. But I do think, like, just like 215, when we were in high school, 2003, my homie got his card. He was 17 when he first got his card, and he started going to the clubs. And we didn't know anything about what to buy. It took us quite a few years to figure out exactly what we wanted and what was different about different products and stuff. And I think that you can't trick weed people. All these companies, they can keep going, but you can't trick us. And you can maybe trick a new weed smoker, but it'll only take them a couple years to figure out what's real and what's fake. And he's not going to smoke that stuff. There's no money for them to make if weed just continues to teach us about weed itself.
That is such, I've never thought about that. You've just filled me with such optimism at the idea, because I've been watching it. What's happening is that certain sort of dealers in the UK, then again, not to badmouth all dealers, don't get at me, people. I support and love a lot of you folks. But there are certain people that are just hitting that kids leaving school, 16 to 18, and they're hitting them with these Mylar bags with terrible mids growing in some horrible mediums with absolutely no love, no care, no flush, no proper cure, no dry, you know what I mean? And they're just, the kids are going, I'll give you 50 quid for an eighth of that. I'll give you 60 quid. And just they're costing themselves out of the market just so they can go to their mates and go, look what I got. And it's some stupid cartoon character that's infringing on several copyrights. That's, quite crass in its nature anyway. I mean, we had quite a lot of ones. I used to run events in the UK, like vendor events, where we call them protestables, like Vivian McPeak style, the Hempfest style. But I'd get no permits. We'd just take over a spot in the city centre and get hundreds of us together and just sell to each other. And the emphasis was, there's enough of us that can't really fuck us. And if the police ever came, I went and kind of went, all right, let's do this. Luckily, they saw the optics of it and never really kind of pushed it. But we had a few vendors turn up there that then started going, we're going to brandize, we're going to get your brands. And they came back with like a SpongeBob character, and they'd readied his eyes and put a joint in his mouth. And I was like, dude, no, you can't expect that I'm going to support you and sponsor and put you as a sponsor on public-facing material if what we're trying to do here is show that cannabis is for adults. We're selling to adults. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, we can all enjoy cartoons and Rick and Morty and Family Guy, whatever else. But there has to be that definitive line, especially while the prohibitionists are going, you can't be selling to kids. But back to my original point is that the reason I was filled with dread is I was watching them just onboard this generation and them starting to demand more of these. We had tuna tins for a while, which was horrible. Just little tuna tin cannabis packs, and they were all the rage, and all the vendors went out and bought them off eBay and got their own labels and were putting the crappiest weed in them and adding 30, 40 quid to a tin, and the youngins were buying them up. But you are right. Is that, yeah, I've watched the first iteration of those generations now start to demand better products. For all they've been told all this shit by certain people, there's still people like myself and others in the UK that are just constantly promoting and pushing knowledge and truth about the plant and creating material and content for them to understand that there's more than just what they're being sold. So thank you for that, genuinely.
Yeah. I've seen it. I've been talking about it a little bit. It's like, you can't trick. You can trick people that smoke tobacco and cigarettes. You can trick alcohol drinkers with beer and hard alcohol, but you can't trick us weed smokers.
We know what we like, and I think
We know what's good.
Yeah, it's weird though, because that's the truth of something that we in the UK here are massively struggling with. So we've just got a prescription system since 2018. In the interest of fairness, I am a script holder myself, but I'm jipping their system to get a pot, frankly, and I don't care if that's on the record, because that is exactly what I am doing, and the majority of people in this country are fucking doing. So the pot gives you that sort of protection, but they're prescribing based on THC CBD ratios, when we know that it's the combination, the synergy of the terpenes, flavonoids, other minor components, and the cannabinoids together that give the effect, and that it's as unique as our fingerprints. Like, you guys are sat smoking on the same joint right now, you know, the same cultivar, but we'll have nuanced different reactions to it. So they're trying to standardize and sell our industry by going, oh, if you smoke lemon haze, all of you will have this response. Oh, if you smoke sawdog, you'll have all this response. And it's just bullshit. They're trying to create a market that doesn't exist. And it's the harder they push it, I think you're right. Yeah, the more people are just going to be like, whoa, no, this is not it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's not doing it for me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting. So let's get on the business side of things, because obviously you guys grow some trees, obviously slightly more restricted than I suppose you would like to be in an ideal world. So as breeders, you guys, you produce your own genetics as well. I think I read, don't you?
Yeah, we've been doing our own breeding for a couple of years now.
Nice. Do you want to give us a sort of a summation, a bit of an insight into that?
Yeah, it's like, because working with Subcool forever, like Subcool was the king of he was like the king of cannabis for a bit. He was breeding the most strains, and he had people breeding strains that he was selling on his catalog, like his partners and stuff. So there was so many strains that we would be growing before we even met Sub. And then once we met Sub, we had access to his whole vault of every strain he's ever made. We could get a seed anytime we wanted of anything. It was outrageous stuff that he had collected for years, stuff that hasn't been released yet. We were always doing new tester things, because we always like new strains. We very rarely stick to the same strain. We're always growing new stuff. And so like being around him was just like super cool, and watching him do all the breeding stuff. But it was like we didn't want to breed. We had so much fun watching him do it, and getting all the any strain that he would make, where it was already right there. But it was always interesting, and then he wanted to make our Mendo dope strain, so then we kind of made that with him, and we brought our female over there, and he started a male, and we went in the room and we kicked the plant around and had it pollinate all of our females. It was so cool to see. So slowly we just kept getting more into wanting to do it. We just were always so busy with our music and everything else that breeding was always very serious. Like, to be a breeder, we felt like there's only certain people that were breeding because they were really serious about it. They weren't pollen chuckers at all. So it just seemed like it was like pretty overwhelming for us to jump into it. But then a little bit after Sub passed, and after even right before Sub passed, when the fire hit and took Subcool's house out, it took out all his seeds, like his whole stash. It took out our Mendo dope strain that we just made. It was before we got to release it, so it all burned in the fire. So then we remade it at our house because Sub's house was gone. And then that kind of like started us seeing like it's not super difficult to breed, and it was like super fun to do. And then after that, we just started kind of wanted to make a next lineup. And after Sub passed, we felt like it was just like part of like, it's almost like being and walking with his shoes, or like him helping us, like even in our
passing us the torch almost.
Yeah.
Like our breed room, his brother, right? He sent us the ashes. Yeah. Subcool's brother sent us Sub's ashes in like a little bullet. We have 2 little bullets with Sub's ashes in it, and we put that in our breeding room. So he's kind of there with
surrounded by the plants. Yeah.
And so, Sub was always like, before we had made the strain with him, he was always pushing us like, man, you guys should
you guys should make your own strains. You guys should start breeding. And we're like, yeah, like yeah, for sure we want to, but we're just not quite ready yet. And he's like, more and more pushing us that we got to, make your guys' strain. And then he's like, you guys have done everything else. He's like, you guys been making music about this. You did this. You grow the biggest trees. You've done this. It's like, it's time. The next thing for you guys is like making strains. And it was like, okay, like, and that's when we got to make the strain with him and really be firsthand in the mix and watching the process happen and shucking the seeds out. And it was just like, wow, this is really cool. And it's like, it is the next step for us to get into like starting to create our own strains and making things that we really like. Sub always, he made strains, that stuff that he loved, and he intertwined and felt like it was really good weed. And, when someone like that, like, knows good weed and what they like, majority of the time, everyone else is going to be enjoying it too. Cause like, Sub was a weed nerd. He was the one, like, so, and just like us, like, we've grown up in it so long that we've became really connoisseurs and like know our shit. We know what good weed is. So and being around some of these cats and watching them create strains, it was just kind of soaking that game up and learning that knowledge. And then, okay, let's start doing it. Let's start experimenting. And the first couple rounds we did came out really nice. And it's been so much fun that, all right, yeah, let's make some more. Like, what else can we do? Like, I wonder what, and we're such pheno hunters too. Like, that's such a big thing for us. And what makes growing cannabis so fun for us the whole time and will always be fun is pheno hunting and seeing these variations and just seeing how many different things can happen from each strain. It's just it's so cool and interesting, and how deep you can dive into all these terpene combinations, all the ratios of THCs and CBDs. So it's like, it's a never ending thing that we just feel like we can always continue painting new pictures and creating new flowers and strains and art, for people to enjoy.
That's lush. So do you do your own, so wait, are you providing genetics commercially? So you're providing seeds or producing seeds, rather?
We sell the seeds for so long, working with Sub, so many, and then with us filming our garden and having big plants, so many people just hit us up. Can I buy seeds? I want to buy seeds. So everyone thinks if they get our seeds, they'll have our plants.
They'll have trees, yeah.
So like, for so long, we're just turning it down. Go to Subcool. We like exotic genetics too. We're like, go to exotic genetics. And after so long, we're like, are we fucking stupid?
It's like also calling. Like, everyone wants to buy our seeds.
Like, why turning down everyone and after we started making them, we're like, oh, wow, it's really easy to make some fire when you have a really good mom and you kind of know your plants and pick out a nice male. It's not super hard to make really good stuff anymore because there's so much good stuff that you're using.
Yeah, I suppose there's an ever-growing market as well. Yeah, I was just curious if you did sort of your own artwork for sort of the packaging.
I mean, we have a lot of ideas. Like, we give a lot of our insight to our artwork people of like our whole, like, we like to visualize concepts, and like it was same with our album covers and things. Like, when we make an album, we really like to do really theme style stuff where we'll revolve around a certain thing, and like, so we'll have ideas to bring to life and we'll bring it to our people. Like, one of our homies out here, that a local that we live with, King Size Creations, he's been doing our like album cover artwork since our very first album that we dropped. So the first concert flyer that we ever made, was with him. So
he made our Mendo logo and everything.
Yep.
So it's like with us, Photoshop and making professional artwork is the last thing that we didn't want to do. We just got Photoshop this year so we could do small things, but it is like a whole nother world where we'll rough sketch it and then let them do the magic.
Nah, yeah, I get that. I am full of ideas, but my execution often leaves a lot for the imagination to desire. I suppose let's get into some nitty gritty then. Let's actually look at California. Its legal market since 2016 has been speculated for a while, and I think now factually being proven to be possibly one of the most diverted markets, as in that the most product that's legally produced ends up in illegal markets, as it were, or not legally sold. Why do you think that's ended up? Is it part of the tax? Is it the culture, like you said, of people that are just going, well, we're just going to continue to grow anyway? Or is it?
It's for sure both. I think there's a lot of people that have their hookups for a long time and it went legal. They didn't care. They're just still going to do what they wanted to do. And then A lot of people got permits to be safe. They had the money to just do the permit. The metric system hasn't been pro, so there's a lot of loopholes in metric, and even they didn't start doing that even for the first year or two, like forcing you to do it also. So some semi-smart people, depending on what lane you're trying to take, just got the permits to be able to grow a giant garden without getting harassed by the cops, and then that just goes wherever it wants to go. And then so many of the big companies, you know, I won't want to name names too, because I don't know firsthand, but I've heard a lot of things about some of the biggest companies, and there's an incredible amount of backwards things going on too, where they take illegal weed into the legal market instead of taking legal weed into the legal market. They go backwards with it.
Yeah, I've been teasing out a narrative that's happening. I can't remember the name of the town, but it's borders on Oregon and California. And one of the local sheriffs earlier in the year declared effectively a state of emergency. And the narrative that seems to be emerging there is South American and Central American cartels that are utilizing Oregon being one of the most relaxed areas in terms of how fast and how many licenses they issued to be able to produce a mass amount. And yeah, the narrative that I'm kind of hearing from two different sources, one is exactly this, that it is ending up in legal marketplace, and the other is that it is obviously just being added to a lot of the stuff that fails tests in California. So obviously California are quite stringent on heavy metals and particles, and obviously a lot of the people in the industry are, as we've already spoke of, let's just use the colloquial term, chads. So they're not really interested or giving a shit about the soil that they're building. They're not they're not looking at those things. So then they're surprised at the end result and then going, oh crap, what do we do with it? Well, we put it in the bin. It's a tax write-off. They don't check that it went in the bin. It then goes wherever it goes, as you said, and it can, dependent on it. I mean, air quotes, Cali weed here in the UK is selling for sometimes 60, 70 quid a gram. Damn. And it's, I know from several sources firsthand from farmers I've met in Mendocino that are going, yeah, watch this. Go, look, this box, it's gone in the bin. I get a 4.
Oh, yep, there you go.
I think it was me. I hit the keyboard. Sorry.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
And so this ends up wherever it ends up. But if you then put it on a plane, if you then vac pack it, because again, it's also there's loose Cali, and then what smarter people over here, I say smart, deceiving individuals over here, again to go back to certain members of the community, and then going, all right, well, let's go get 1,000 Mylar bags imported from China. We'll get them printed up with this. Say it's Cali, and boom, you're then talking. I mean, one of our events, before we start to cap the vendors, they sold an eighth of Stardog for 120 quid that they said was Cali import. And it was, again, there's also a market here in the UK where they're using rocks and other additives that make the bud incredibly tight and small, or the sort of PGRs is sort of the collective term. They make them really small and tight. And then they're saying that, that because it looks like it, they're saying that's Cali. So they're putting in products that they know are harmful to the bud to make it look, so when you get an eighth is three nugs, and when a kid pays that, they're like, oh man, that must mean it's amazing. Do you know what I mean? They haven't got around it. You would rather have something loose and nice and lovely from somebody's garden that's organic, that's you're going to smoke one joint of it, but and be riding, really enjoying the experience, not just chasing it. Oh, I'm going to get stoned in a heavy forehead. Then 2 hours later, I'm going to get stoned again, heavy forehead. Yeah. That's not the experience of cannabis, but this is what the people are being tricked into. And again, with one of the things I appreciate about Oregon versus Cali, and when I stayed in Eureka, I think it was, which is about an hour and a half down into California, I drove back to Oregon to go buy weed. I did not want to go to a Cali dispensary because I didn't like surrendering my passport in one room, being sat down with no identification, no idea if I'm getting in, then let into a room and then just kind of ushered through. And the experience was very... very corporate, very depersonalized. Whereas Oregon, I literally just kind of flashed it to him. He went, oh, British passport, cool, Brit. Talk some shit. And then just anything I wanted to look at. They were giving us bags of weed to pause with and stuff, you know what I mean? Whereas in the dispensaries in Cali, they were literally, here you can smell the sample. I was like, I don't want to smell the sample. That's been there in weeks. I want to smell what you're about to sell me. No, you can buy that. And it's like, the experience just wasn't there compared to then again, the weed that I was given from people that I met in California was phenomenal. But I met commercial growers that were like, no, you don't want what we grow commercially. You not even saying it was bad necessarily, but saying that they're like, here's what I've grown with love. Here's my personal couple of plants. Here's a bud of love compared to his are mass produced. And so even that shows that they recognize it.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
It's crazy. That's funny that you say that. Yeah, because we're pretty used to the clubs being like that, especially different clubs that we would go to in the city and stuff. It's like you're going to meet someone in prison or something.
Yeah.
You gotta go through the whole lock gate situation, check your shit, sit there for 10 minutes, and then like you're saying, the samples, checking the flowers out changed since legalization. They messed so many things up. It was way cooler on the 215 days. It was like you're saying, you walk in, you check out the eights that you're buying actually, and everything's way more personal. It's only a few clubs out there that are like that now.
Yeah, it's interesting to get, as you said, under sort of under 215, there was that discrepancy because they didn't seek to overly regulate it. They created an ambiguous bit of legislation that meant if you said the right thing at the right time, you were protected, kind of thing. If you got inside of it and you played the game, as it were, you knew you were playing a game. They knew you were playing the game. But that then meant that you had more social space. I mean, Nevada's only just bringing on consumption lounges now, and a lot of other places, even like Colorado, I think the only cannabis club that I would know to be like a European style one, I think there was only one or two of them. For all the consumption spaces weren't allowed. You could, same as some of the Dutch shops, you'd buy one space, next door is a consumption space, but you can't buy in the consumption space. But it's a completely eroded the social experience of cannabis. I mean, I was so excited when I got off the plane in Denver, went to drive to, it's a funny anecdote actually. So landed, went immediately, was like, I'm going to a weed shop, need some weed. I've been on a plane for like 8 hours. Edibles that I ate on the other side have gone. I'm really hyper now. Everything's big and bright and crazy and different. Got into my rented car, drove down, didn't realize I had to drive through downtown Denver at rush hour. Pulled up along, there was this SUV at a traffic light and he beeped us. And me being a Brit, and I was in the wrong lane, supposed to go right. I cut in front of him. And then about 17,000 blue lights appeared from every corner of this car. And he just, and I'm like, oh shit, okay, pull over. And obviously cop walks up, and first experience of this, and he's literally unbuckles his gun, comes, touches the back of my car, and I'm literally got my passport, my driver's license, and my hands are like this in the car. And with the window open, like, I'm not getting fucked with today. Yeah, and this whole fucking thing was weird, because as soon as he saw that I was a Brit, he was just like, oh man, you cool. Got a business card, wrote down on the back of it, and when you get any trouble, show him this. And it was just the most like corrupt thing of like, what? And went in this weed shop, went and bought, I think it was Fox Cannabis, shout out Fox Cannabis. They were wonderful. There was a lovely lady in there that she just gave me like, I wanted to hold the biggest bag of weed she had just out of novelty. And she went, just pulled like this thing and went, here you go. I just went, fuck. So, look, they spent $200, had more weed than I very much needed. Went back to my motel and realized immediately I couldn't smoke. I was like, wait, lawfully, I can't do shit. I don't own a home. I can't be in my own home. I went down to the clerk and went, I've got a smoking room. And I went, what does that mean, smoking? And the guy went, it's a $250 cleaning charge if I smoke weed in the room. And I was like, okay. So it was just like, I just smoke weed in the fucking room then. But it was so weird that everywhere was selling all this weed, but then there was no space really that I could find. Even when I went out for walks, I went in the parks, and the parks had signs on saying you can't smoke weed here. And I'm like, I'm outside. It's 10 o'clock at night. There is no one here. Why not? But yeah, it's weird that we've lost that social element. I mean, why do you think that is? Because with pubs or with alcohol consumption, they want to incentivize that, because if there's more social space, you're more likely to consume more product.
Yes.
Is that...
It's weird why they don't do it more. I don't understand. It doesn't make much sense. Yeah.
There's something there has to be something with the laws, the way that these laws are. There's a few places that have consumption lounges we've heard of, and there was one club here in town that had a consumption lounge, and it was super cool. It was like you're saying, it's kind of like how it's supposed to be. It was a separate room. You just went through the next door, and you were kind of in an outside area that had an overhang on it. They did concerts there and stuff too, and it's like perfect setup, but there's very few of those.
I wonder, actually, I've just had a thought, maybe to answer even my own question, that because they've observed our culture under prohibition. And now they've gone, right, let's design it and sell it back to them. They've observed us go out, meet the plug, and run away home because we don't want to be arrested. We don't want to get caught buying drugs or in possession. So maybe there is even an observation there. They go, well, these people, they go out and they buy the weed and then they run home and they smoke it. So they must only want to get the weed and go home. It just feels like, again, they just don't know that. No, that's what we want. There's a reason people have traveled to Amsterdam for decades from around the world, and it is to have that social experience. Obviously, there's the red light district and many other draws and appeals, I imagine, to many people in Amsterdam. But it is mainly that liberal freedom experience of I'm sat on the street smoking a joint, enjoying a coffee, and it is that novelty, that taste of freedom. And I think that freedom is the element that seems to be missing, especially from all legalization, but especially from California. As we were saying before, it seems very deliberately restrictive.
Yes, it is. It is very deliberately restricted. There could be so many cool things. We just went to Michigan this last weekend, and we didn't get to go to any lounges or clubs and stuff, but they have a very relaxed situation, it seems like, when it comes to events and all kinds of cool things. They do like weed golfing tournaments. They got cannabis coffee and cannabis coffee car show situations where you smoke and look at cool cars. They have all these things that we don't have out here in Cali. And I'm like, what's going on out here? Why does Cali not have any like events that are also weed events? It's one or the other. It's a super weed event or anything you can't smoke weed at. But we can smoke weed this whole time we've been growing up in public. You know, we smoke in public all day in front of police on the streets. But it's like there's not an actual hangout place for people like us.
And that's, up here, that's rare too. It's like up here we've been doing it for a long time, just smoking. Like we never worried about it too much. We're just smoke out right out front of the club, whatever, in the streets. Never get harassed that much. But then when we go out to places, it's like, oh yeah, we gotta remember we're not in Mendo right now. We can't just fire up right here like we own the place. Like it's not home.
Yeah, it's weird that this is one of the things I personally am in an odd position that I'm probably going to end up fighting against legalization here in the UK because of what our government are going to interpret and design it to be. There's also some sort of nuance there around the legalese and the language of it. But I did 3 hours last week with a lawyer. Go watch that episode, folks. That's where you'll understand everything that I'm talking about with language and law. But yeah, I feel that what I've kind of articulated in recent episodes and what I've really been trying to understand is I feel that legalization is the last death throw of prohibition, that it is the same people that have for 50 years gone, or however many years in your region around the world, wherever you're listening, you're bad for doing this, you're evil, you're vicious, you're criminals, you're druggies, you're the same as a terrorist or rapist, whatever, you're bad is bad is bad. Then all of a sudden, they've designed a system that means they solely profit from selling us little bits of freedom back. And then we are supposed to just kind of accept that and go, well, it's legal, but it's, even as fucking as Jack Harris said, if we can't all grow as much as we want, then it's not free. It's not, there's no liberty there. Yeah. And I think it's the same as if you can smoke a cigarette somewhere, you should be able to smoke a joint. Obviously, being kind of courteous, you're not then going to go, I'm in a tiny space and just blow it in people's faces sort of thing. Yeah. But even in nightclubs in the UK, for example, because of the smoking ban, we have almost corrals where they corral the smokers together. And so if you're like out with 3 smokers, you have to go out with your mates because you don't want to get lost. You know what I mean? So then you're stuck in this environment. Whereas if it was kind of where it was before, some places smoked inside, some outside, some you just go to the curb. But they're just trying to force these behaviors into controlled expressions. And I think cannabis people, we're not like that, especially the people that are, I don't know whether some people say it's like with the sort of raster intention, or what has become known as the stoner of just, you consume cannabis it's idle. It is a nutrient. You consume it morning to night. You consume it all day. It's like water, food. It's just something you consume. And so to then try and corral those into these experiences of going, oh, you can go to a concert. Oh, but not this one. You're not allowed to smoke there. Oh, this one's a weed one, so we're only going to bring weed music. It separates the cultures. It stops us reintegrating. I mean, one of the things I appreciate most when I went to see one of my favorite bands, Placebo, in Amsterdam, and contrast these two experiences. I saw the same gig 2 months apart, one in a stadium in Amsterdam, one in Wembley in London. In Amsterdam, went over, ate some truffles in the morning, had a nice, lovely day wandering around the canals, looking at fucking tulips and cheese. Then went and got some edibles and stuff, pre-rolled shitload of joints, went into the arena. Was wandering around even in the arena as one of the acts was on, looking for the smoking area, and some Dutch guy just went and just sparked my joint and just give it, and I was like, okay. And so then just smoked the whole way through the show. And even though it's an indoor joint, and everybody was, and security wasn't hassling people, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. But then when I was in Wembley, I was panicked even on the train. I could smell how strong I smelled of weed from the joint I had on the between the underground and that train. Then when I got off at Wembley is a long, huge walkway toward the stadium. I had 2 joints on me, and the joint holder was obviously quite long and smooth. And I've had experiences in London where I've been patted down and thought I had a fold knife on me because I've had a joint holder.
Yeah.
And so obviously they still pat down for weapons or whatever. I'm a young lad. Obviously I look like a wrong, and apparently. And so I was walking up to it. I panicked and went, all right, fuck it. And I just smoked 2 joints, just as fast as I could, put both joints down. And when I got to the thing, the guy stopped us and went, you fucking stink. And just like pushed us to the side. And obviously there was clouds still coming off us. You got to like move through the clouds to see me. And so the guy searched us, and I went, look, he's a joint holder. I've just smoked him. I don't have anything else on me. And he's going to my wallet looking for coke and stuff. I'm like, there's not weed in there. What are you looking for? And so he was just going through everything. And he got a supervisor come over, and his supervisor asked if they had any air freshener. They wanted to fucking spray me because I smelled offensive. They would want to refuse me entry. And then they gave me my ticket back and went, we're keeping an eye on you. And if you do any drugs, you're out of here. And it was just the most horrific experience and feeling. So by the time I got in, obviously, then I was higher than I wanted to be, so I wasn't necessarily overly comfortable. I was in an anxious state because of what security just left me, surrounded by thousands of people, waiting for a band I wanted to see, but then in a state of just anxiety, and then driven to going and buying a pint. So I had an object, I had a thing to feel that I fit in, almost. Do you know what I mean? And then still watch the gig, and then watch people spark up cigarettes, and I'm like, what? We're in, and it just boom. It was just such an oddity of the difference of the experience. I mean, the other one is like Melkweg, famous venue in Amsterdam, and they hosted the High Times, and they did it most recently. I think the one I went to was Unity Cup, and they did the announcements of that there, and you just consume inside. You just it's part of the thing. You're there for weed. Why would you not be allowed to consume weed? So it's just odd that Amsterdam, which is not and never legalized it, it's entirely just we're looking the other way. It's far more liberal than the places in the world that have air quotes legalized it, you know? So this is why, again, I feel like it's the last ditch effort of prohibition is that they will legalize it, because true freedom means we wouldn't have to legalize cannabis, because we don't legalize tomatoes. There's just tomatoes. But if you want to make ketchup, you have to get like a hygiene certificate and health and safety and bottling plants and workers, and there's industry there, and that needs regulating. But if you just want to make your ketchup at home, nobody's coming to bray on your door and go, how much is in that? Is that a Heinz recipe? Now we're going to sue you. Do you know what I mean? They're not regulating that shit. And that's what I want, is the people to be free to fuck around with the plant as much as we want. If I happen to fill my flat with 20,000, I probably couldn't, let's be more realistic, 200 plants, I should then be able to do that. If I then want to go and sell that en masse, there should be some form of regulation. But there should also be like, I'm trying to think of the equivalent. We have like allotments over here where like old people or people with time grow on designated land, and then they have markets where they sell the fruits and veg to each other. That's not regulated. You know, if somebody gets ill off that, somebody got ill off that. No one's going to prison necessarily. No one's going to, do you know what I mean? It's so we need that spectrum. Whereas at the minute, it feels like they're concentrating all of it on just this capitalist, highly commercial, who's going to be the Starbucks of weed race, you know?
For sure. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It is. It's the last ditch effort, I think, for sure. Like with the California, the way the law states, it says it's like, it's not cannabis legalization, it's cannabis regulation. That's what the whole law is. It's regulating it. It's not legalizing it at all.
But doesn't California's law also state that it has to have a cancer warning on cannabis packaging? Have I made that up?
I believe it. I don't know 100%, but I think so. There's lots of warnings on it. There's a cancer thing, or a Surgeon General warning of some sort.
Which is amazing, considering the study of what we then know about THC and apoptosis in cancer cells, what we know about CBD sort of interfering with cancer growth. That it it boggles the mind because, again, like we think of other things that are legal, your brain automatically assumes that the best minds and the best people have brought the knowledge and truth, and we're constantly assessing this, and we're always checking that we're right. And if they're not doing this with cannabis at the level that they are producing this, it makes me worry about other regulated systems, to say the least. Do you know what I mean? Because they've said that cannabis is this dangerous drug, this horribly horrific, up there with heroin, despite the fact nowhere in human history is it recorded to have killed anybody. And believe me, we've tried. We're trying every day. We're consuming as much as we can, and it's not killing us. So why the hell do we need to put a cancer warning? And there should be a smoking too much of this may make you, sit on the couch and watch reruns of fucking Rick and Morty. But that's your own choice. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's super true. It's crazy. It's what's also funny too is like if they go too far, we're just gonna break the rules again. We broke the rules the whole time. We broke the rules, so they try to set too much real foundation of stuff we don't like. We're just gonna have to do our own thing again.
One of the things that again worries me of why I'm against legalization in the UK is that once they pass it, it's really going to be hard to fix the wrongs of that, especially in our corrupted system, because we have, similar to your sort of House of Representatives and the Senate and the way that works, we have the House of Lords, but ours is unelected. So basically the people who pick our laws 1 year, the next few years, they're in a forever position. So they get to fortify and reject any new laws affecting the law that they passed. So they've got, all the money and power infinitum. And so with California now, they've used a good chunk of that legal money to create like the California Cannabis Bureau or Authority, whatever they called it, and these other nuanced new authoritative institutions that are there to enforce Prohibition 2.0, this legalization. That they're just actively saying, oh, it's been a good year, we've destroyed X amount of millions of plants. Like, how are those being then destroyed under legalization? It doesn't make sense. So I'm just worried that power and authority that they've gained and the public perception that they've taken the Chad Lights, this people that have consumed cannabis and are pro-cannabis but have never really got lost in the culture, never really deep dove into it and lived cannabis. So they're then going, well, I can buy my own, so I can grow my couple of plants, I'm happy. And so they're then not going to fight and champion and protect, I don't think, the radicals that are then going to go, fuck you, I deserve to be able to grow as much of this and do whatever I want with this. So I just worry that, the next iteration of this, because it looks like from all the people I'm speaking to, California's is collapsing, even with the proposed taxation changes. All that's going to then do is further accelerate this race to the bottom in terms of the price per pound. And that's just then going to, again, knock out most of your hobby low-levelists. The only ones that can afford that loss are your large institutions. So again, it then further concentrates that power against, people like yourselves. So
That's what sucks too. Like, whether it's how people will learn as they smoke, but as it takes a couple years for all of the new smokers to realize that they might want someone else's stuff, they're just going to be hard for them to be on the shelf by then. That's the timing of things is very tight for anyone that really loves weed and puts out a really good product to actually survive long enough for people to realize that it's special, that it's worth buying over another company that's blasted on there with all of their products, like super professional style.
Yeah. Obviously, it's that farmer's market. There needs to be the two tiers of regulation. As you say, that, or if you want to spend the millions on the marketing, on the social media presence, on the building, being in, Beverly Hills or whatever, then that should exist. But then if you are literally just somebody that grows quality cannabis that can then pass the tests and the regulation, you should be able to just do a post system. You should be able to do you turn up at a market on a Saturday. I mean, I saw JJ, the breeder of Stardog recently, him just doing pop-up stalls in literally in a square in New York, because obviously there's kind of that space. There was with Colorado for a couple of years before it onboarded, between like 2012, 2014, when the first dispensary opened, they had like gift economies so that people would have tables with cannabis on, and you'd go over and go, I would like to buy this cannabis. I'm not selling that cannabis. You may donate me some money and I may gift you this cannabis. And it created that sort of loophole. And I think that if we can find and exploit that in the legacy industry inside of these legalized areas, that they'll then be able to thrive and outlive, or even not even outlive, but coexist. Because ultimately the capitalists are going to be here and they're going to continue to do their shit. There will be a McDonald's of weed, and they will have that Big Mac strain or whatever. And that'll serve the people that want that. The people that literally just want to, I just want to quickly grab some weed, and they'll jump in somewhere, grab a cheap 20 and move on with the day. But the people that are wanting that experience and wanting to support the culture, I think they would travel to those events and they would support them in a different way.
Yeah. When I was listening to your interview with D'Angelo too, the way he was talking about his idea of the 5,000 square foot limit and being able to sell online too, you know what I mean? Like if they did something just like with an online situation where you could get some kind of permit, pass some kind of tests, and do online sales eventually, that would be huge for any small underground farmer.
Yeah, I mean, the product would step for it. Yeah, the product would then have to stand for itself. The marketing gimmicks, the advertising, even the sort of the trickery of the lighting and again, some of the I think I only went to 2 California dispensaries, but the way they were set up compared to the mom and pop feel. I mean, I went to obviously a place like, I ended up in like a place like Pendleton in Oregon, and that real out of the way bits. So I obviously saw some real niche and different sort of style of dispensaries and access points. But the way that it was set up in California was just to almost beguile you, just to make you like, oh yeah, I want the thing, and yeah. Whereas the other one's like
the nugget that's glowing and flashing in my face.
Yeah, it's super,
take that one.
Super Mac store style. They all copied the Mac.
Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy. Whereas there was, I don't even know, where was it? I think it was northern Colorado, and one of those, they had couches around the outside. And I was like, just mind if I take a peek? And the guy's like, yeah, chill. And then he kept giving us like, once he figured out I was like, I wrote for Weed World, and it was part of like culture in different ways. He kept giving us like tester carts. He was like, hey, go this. And I was just like, oh, cool. The vibe of that was just like, I did not want to leave that space. And that was just like in almost the center of like, they're taking a huge car park from like an adjacent Safeway or whatever it was, and just like built a unit in the middle of it. And this was just that weed spot. And it was just inside of it. I could have been in Spain. I could have been in Amsterdam. It had that same sense of, I felt like I could have rolled up a joint. I wouldn't have, to obviously risk him getting in trouble or whatever, but it had that welcoming feeling. Whereas again, there were dispensaries in California. It felt like I may as well have just thrown my wallet and ran away. Like that's all they wanted was the cash. They didn't want me to ask questions. The queues as well, they make them busy in the way that they slow service, the way that they deliberately slowly check. And I feel that that's part of, so when you get there, you don't have that time to inquire, to make that informed decision, to weigh up, what about this one versus that one? But do you know what I mean? So you're just in and you're out.
Yeah. It would be a hell of a lot cooler if it was a more comfortable take your time situation. Yeah.
There's
a couple places like it, but there's so few, and it seems like what sucks too is with the legalization, it's not just the farmers that are struggling; it's the real mom and pop clubs are super struggling. You would think, like the clubs always make money, like they shouldn't be able. They're marking everything up, double or triple these days, but they have so many fees, they have so many taxes that they're paying for that. There's a lot of big companies, the big clubs that are now like owning more and more clubs in that one company, like different clubs that own 10 different locations and things like that. And it's making it really hard for any of the last one standing to be here.
Yeah.
What's it? Because I know one of the things that really screwed me up when I was camping in America is when I was in the national forests and the parks, I'm not under the jurisdiction of the state. I'm under the jurisdiction of the Fed. So when I went camping and I was doing drugs in the woods, I could have got in serious fucking trouble. And that messed with my head a hell of a lot, because it was like, there's an arbitrary, like when I drive out the trees, I'm safe. But if I drive back across this line, you're saying that cop would then arrest me. It was such an arbitrary thing, but it got me thinking of then what they've done to sort of restrict the spaces I was talking about before that you can consume cannabis. So I was just then wondering, is there scope to create like campgrounds and other like semi-private spaces, like bed and breakfasts sort of things, that can then get around that you could then supply to the people there, because technically they'd be, in a domicile in a private space, so it's not a commercial setting. They do have a couple of those. There's a couple starting up. There's a
like a weed Airbnb that's kind of out here in California now, and I don't know how much places they have listed on there. It seems like a lot more Northern California spots, but you can go and stay a night at a farm, and then they have like another price where they'll supply you free weed. You know what I mean? They have that kind of system too.
Yeah.
So they are starting to have things like that. So that's pretty cool to see. But like I was saying too, like in Michigan, they have so many different cool things. Like you're saying, like they would have like a campground smoke out hangout situation, but I think it's possible to do out here, but you're still like breaking the rules in a way. You know, it's not set up, it seems like, for things to be super relaxed like that, where you can do mix the cannabis up in certain areas.
Yeah, it's weird because of the language they put in the legislation. I spent a night in Fresno, of all places. I was basically trying to avoid LA when I was winding down my road trip to fly back out. Partly because I'd run out of money, and partly because just too overstimulating in terms of even just looking at the I-9 or whatever the hell it was. I looked at, they got on that and then got off to Fresno and got a motel room. And I was doing some Googling about that spot and realized there was, at that time that I'd gone, there was no dispensaries in the area. There's a population of like 900,000 people and no dispensaries. And then I was looking at like the network links in terms of like buses and whatever else. And it got me as I always would anyway, especially when I was out there. I was just sort of Googling shit and realized there's kind of a loophole in the way that California interprets private consumption in your own home. Is that there's an interpretation that suggests that own home means a home that you own. So therefore, if you don't own it, you don't have the immediate right to it. So therefore, your landlord can determine whether you can consume cannabis in that spot or not. So then you can be in a legal space and not legally be allowed to consume it. And I realized that, again, looking at the statistics, the majority population were Black and Hispanic in Fresno. Majority renters, very little private home ownership, no fucking... and the reason I was looking at this is because every time I sparked a joint on my balcony, people for fucking hundreds of yards were looking at the weed smell, were like looking for it. And so I felt really sus. And so I was just looking at it and it's a control element. So they then can't legally buy weed there. They can't legally consume it in their own home. You can't, if you then consume it on the street, you're then going to get in trouble as a misdemeanor offense. Yeah. So it just creates a privilege in other spaces and obviously then a disadvantage in this one. And so, yeah, it's just, as we said before, this is why it feels like legalization is this end point of prohibition, because it's doing so much of the work that prohibition set out to do. It's racist, classist endeavors. It's attempts to control the population, to corral us into, behaving a certain way. And it is, I suppose, ultimately just asset stripping our communities, because we're giving this industry money. And where's it all going? I mean, I don't know about the tax affairs of someone like Curaleaf or Tilray, but I'm pretty sure that they'll have an entire division of lawyers trying to figure out how the fuck they don't pay that tax back into the system. So then we're just further impoverishing the areas, at least under the dealers. If you bought from Dave down the road, Dave would go spend the money you just give him in the shop down the road. Do you know what I mean? And it would all stay circular in our economies. And so it feels like we're losing under legalization. We're losing the freedom that we had to actually be able to walk down the street and smoke a joint, because even the same sort of in the UK, people in some areas don't really care. In others, they really do. But then as the law sort of changes now with prescriptions, for example, people go, well, is that medical? Is that medicinal? they feel that they've got a right to intervene and then to be like, well, you're wrong. You're bad. You're not doing it well. You're not doing it the right way. Do you know what I mean? It's such an oddity. Whereas before we had that, they just ignore us. And that's kind of what I want. I want to be ignored by the law. That's it, to literally just get on with what I'm doing now, up my game to be able to make a bit more money and, provide for my community and pay it forward, start some businesses and employ some homies and just get to work. Do you know what I mean? Actually feel
a little bit of freedom. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, man.
It's such a weird time. It's so crazy just talking to people about cannabis all the time and just what the plant has gone through. It is insane. Just evolutions of it and our lifetime. I mean, even people from the generation before us and even one before, crazy weed stories. Weed's changed so much, and now it's in this very interesting change that we're all going to see break out for the next 10 years or even say 20 years. Like, 20 years is a long time to see what's going to happen with the plant.
Yeah, man, for sure.
It's interesting. Up here in Mendo, it's real trippy, like we stay in the mountains and we travel a lot, but when we're out here, it's we're just in nature with the plants, and we get to forget about so much stuff, and it's kind of sucks sometimes for us because we should be sometimes more political and more involved with different people's initiatives and things that are going on. But it's like sometimes it's just nice to get away from it.
I can see why. I spent 3 days in Mendocino, and it's one of the quietest places I think I've ever been on earth. That it is just silent, other than like the natural sounds of birds and whatever else. But there's no fucking industry. There's no major highways. It was just such a wonderful experience. And I went kind of the end of summer. It was like late August. And so everything just had that golden hue, like the grass and everything is baked off, and everything's moving into a fast autumn. And yeah, the colors of it, and just the way that it just flows. All the roads flow through, and there's just spots where people have just settled. And here's my house, here's my farm, here's this, and it's just I can see why it's easy to turn. I mean, not turn off the world, to have the world turned off. Being up there, man.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it really is. Even with COVID too. COVID didn't affect us all that much out here. We did similar stuff that we do all the time, anyways.
Yeah, I think that's one thing we noticed as a general cannabis community here in the UK was, we just kind of persisted. It was like, all right, we're just doing a lot more postal. It was dealers in London were dressing up as like delivery drivers, like people that drop off food and for the food services. Nice. People were dressing up as nurses and doctors, so they had a reason to be out on the street. Now you have like a doctor's bag full of deals and shit. We get we get creative, and this is again to go back to what we were sort of saying before of why there should always be optimism. For all we see these legalized systems sort of taking over and gaining ground. We are ingenuitive. We are entrepreneurs. We are borderline geniuses. Some of the most weird, wonderful, creative, borderline insane, but lovely people that I've ever met come from the cannabis culture. And I just can't wait to see. I'm excited to see what the world would look like with a true like reintegration, where we're just all brought back and we can celebrate our weirdness in the same way that we've seen with the evolution of homosexuality and sort of queer identity. In the UK, it was illegal, but only 60 odd years ago. One of our national heroes, Alan Turing, who cracked the Enigma machine, the Germans' encryption machine in World War II, he was chemically castrated by the state afterwards because he was convicted for being a homosexual. And you then look at the evolution of that now to then being celebrated actively for a week, sometimes a month, in the way that it's the major corporations and everything. In some ways, they're co-opting it, but they're still giving light and space to a culture and allowing that culture to exist within the parameters of itself. No one is going to the gay culture and going, you're being gay wrong. And whereas they entirely do, we've got a bunch of straight people effectively coming to us and going, you're living wrong. And it's like, well, you don't know our culture. You don't know our struggle. You don't know who we are. We deserve that space, that protected space to exist as we are. As you said before, under 215, it's almost like they created the furthest boundaries, and then we filled it. And wherever we spilled over the edges, they kind of went, oh, shit, we'll look the other way. And they allowed it to exist. Whereas now that they've come in with a cookie cutter and just stamped it into the middle of the culture and just wiped away the edges. But it's so small, the space that they've squared off, that the majority of the culture is outside of this.
Mm-hmm. Super true. Super good way to explain it.
Yeah, I like that way just to think about it for sure. Because
I like
cutting off so much of that extra stuff that's happening and all the stuff that's bringing it together and its realness of the culture, and they're just trying to really, like you're saying, control us and form us into this thing where it's like, no, we know what we want to do, and we want to feel that freedom and be able to do more, relaxed and be able to connect differently. Like, they're really trying to bottleneck us in and like, all right, here, let's herd you guys into this spot and not let you do this. And that's why it's so important, like these, like podcasts like this and different things, to continually educate people on what to look for in products and cannabis, and like how to help keep small craft farmers alive and survive through this time of that's so hard right now, being overtaken by these big things and big marketing schemes that are getting to all these new smokers and capturing them and taking our chance away of, making it through this big wave. But I think we, like you said, there's the optimism and there's the light at the end of the tunnel for us. There's definitely, we can see what can happen if we just continually work on it and bring everyone together and make it work the way that it can, or the way it should. It's like we can get there for sure. But they're trying to definitely limit how it is and just regulate it and just form us into their way of doing it. But yeah, they don't understand the culture the same.
Yeah, I think it's more and more, especially as we're discovering through this conversation, it does seem to be, it's an intentional ignorance. They've had plenty of opportunity. There are plenty of people producing content for that they could learn from. There are plenty of people like myself that, you know, I've worked with police, politicians, regulators. I'll have a conversation with anybody about cannabis and drugs because it has been my life. And I'm still, as I constantly remind people, I'm at war. They declared a war against me and my actions. So I've got to defend myself ultimately. And yeah, they've placated and twisted us and they've lied to us and gaslit us to a point where I don't blame anybody for cashing in, selling out, whatever you want to call it, for doing whatever they are doing within this space, because I think everything is evolving as it's meant to towards us winning in the long term. We couldn't have just day dot, just flicked it and gone, all right, yeah, there's the culture. Because it's when cannabis goes legal, not in terms of the law, when it's fully not criminalized in any way, which is an inevitability at this point globally, that's going to seep into everything. We will not have petrol companies doing what they're doing because the people will be more conscious. Do you know what I mean? Animal agriculture will look different in terms of the exploitation of certain nations. Our behavior will change. We're seeing this already. Like Oregon's a wonderful example, Colorado as well. And basically you go that you start with a soft system of access for cannabis. It's for medicinal needs. Then you move towards this legalized system. And then all of a sudden you're talking about decriminalizing all drugs. And then all of a sudden you're talking about let's fund education for seniors and the people going into college. You know, let's put more parks and spaces. People become more conscious of nature. And so we start to see this evolution. So actually, there's probably a good thing in these commercial businesses trying to get us to consume as much as possible so that they can make as much as possible, as long as it drives towards that same result. Because as you say, then in a few years, each of them will kind of come to it and go, yeah, this isn't right. So their days are very much numbered. I think it's just a case we need to be vigilant as we're being, and to do exactly what you guys are doing with the music, what I'm doing with the podcast, what people are doing with writing, with art. We're capturing moments in history that are going to tell our story when the day comes that we're all listened to. We're not just pushed aside because you're stoner or whatever. That they actually have. We should be the ones to write this, and we will have these tomes, these documents, this data, this evidence to prove, you know, what we went through, where we were, what actually happened. And I think that's invaluable, so that when the final generation of that kit onboards and goes, nah, fuck the corporate side of it, or that lives in it with that kind of, as you say, it's convenient. I'll quickly pull over and grab a couple of pre-rolls. I'll quickly, whatever. But the people will seek in the same way they seek good food. The McDonald's proliferates, but sort of high quality restaurants. Do you know what I mean? Sort of bespoke little mom and pop cafes. And, you see them in places where there's 15 of them in a row and none of them compete because they all do something slightly different, but they're all providing food. And I think that's what we're going to look like, is eventually they'll just be the same as a smoking sign, like no smoking, whether a place will be weed friendly or not. And you'll be able to tell immediately. And the people that don't want to be around cannabis, yeah, you go to that hotel, you go to that gym, you go to that whatever. But the people that then they're not bothered, or even if you just segregate it like we used to do with smoking, like as in tobacco, there'd be a non-smoking and smoking. I think that's quite a fair way to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's so true though. Like that's the main reason why it got legalized, illegal in the first place, is that it's going to change. It will change the world. It'll change everything, like you're saying, the whole way that the whole world thinks, all of the energy sources, all of the nature side of things, helping the planet more. There's so much money that's going to be lost to people that have built industries for so long and capitalized on different things. It's so crazy to see like what a world would look like when we're all the same.
Yeah,
like the plant is actually part of the world, like it was kind of here for in the first place.
Yeah, man.
I can't believe they can build concrete houses that are fireproof. Like that's incredible with all the fires that's out here.
Exactly, and all the sticks and stems that are just lying around. It's almost it's mental.
Could have bought a fireproof whole city.
I can't imagine what it's going to be like when it actually turns into that. It's crazy too, like with all these gardens, you know, like there's so much uses for the plant that dude, we can have this much weed. We can overgrow the planet, and if we use the plant in the right spot, these big companies could probably make the same amount of money making pharmaceutical stuff or making hempcrete and different things and whatever with the stalks and things, and they don't have to necessarily sell us the flower. You know what I mean? I think over time maybe only people that are going to be selling flowers are actually the real people,
the real farmers.
And there's going to be cool products that we'll make, but they'll be making, there's so much room. If it was open, they'd have a nice niche to just sell THC pills, really professional, and making anything else they want to make. And but the flower and like the original raw product of the plant being done in the right way is like, you can't really mimic that. So I think over time it would be really cool to see what an evolution of that is when the flowers are totally separate from the corporations of cannabis.
Yeah, for sure, exactly. It's weird that since William Randolph Hearst and his yellow top press over in the States in like the 10s and 20s, 1910s and 20s rather, there's been this hysteria that cannabis is going to destroy and displace all of these materials, and it's like, why don't you fuckers just invest in it then? If you want to produce rope, why then just go, oh no, we're going to destroy cannabis in favor of nylon? Why not just use cannabis then? It's such an oddity, with energy production as well, in terms of like biofuels that we can produce now. I mean, with graphene as a supercapacitor, so you use cannabis basically compressed, and it makes a supercapacitor battery that is more efficient than lithium cell. So the stuff that we're putting in Teslas and shit, it's mental. I mean, this is that's cannabis paper. It's very ruined at the minute, but that's cannabis pressed paper injected with graphene ink. And so basically you then lay the paper together and you press it together. And the way that the graphene settles onto the paper is in like a honeycomb sort of shape, and it's an energy conductive. So it stores within it. So it's mental, and that can be made as a byproduct from just your stem. Do you know what I mean? So again, like, they could be doing all of this shit, but instead we're sending children down tiny holes, literally like being held by legs and tied rope to their legs to dig through tunnelways to find ore to then mine up and pollute into the atmosphere. And we can locally source all of this shit. It doesn't need to be a war. They can have it. We're not interested in that. I want to see that proliferate, but I personally don't want to be involved in that kind of industry. That needs to exist en masse. That's trillions of plants grown every year. Grow them more traditional sativa-leaning genetics. So you grow them for much longer into the season. They're not flowering heavy, so you're not getting resin. You're just getting majority cellulose and fiber materials, and use that within all your industrial. And that can then stay separate. You then don't need to fence that off, have armed guards and 24-hour CCTV and all of that shit. And then just leave the bud and the drug aspect to the people that want it as a drug. We don't then need these guys to come in and create mainstream marketing and make millions more consumers. The people that want cannabis, guess what? They find it.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I think that's the other part of this kind of conversation we need to have, or not just us, but I mean collectively as a culture about legalization, is they're going to want to onboard millions more consumers. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but I found, especially not necessarily just with cannabis, but with other drugs, is that they've arrived in my life at the right time. I've not had to seek things like DMT. When DMT arrived at me, I needed DMT, and it's been a component of my life ever since. But then I worry that now we're seeing those same investment companies that have done what they've done to California and Canada. They're moving into psychedelics now. So they're now looking to legalize psychedelics and create, therapies around mushrooms. We're seeing that obviously into the north of you guys up in Oregon. And they're doing this without really giving the people the substance first. They're then not only now going you can have it, but we have to sit with you when you have it. How bullshit is that? Do you know what I mean? They don't even trust us to take it by ourselves. And I feel that they would have tried to do that with cannabis if they could have. Make it like a methadone clinic that you go in, you buy the weed, if you consumed it, right, you're allowed to leave now.
You done yet?
Yeah. It's again, they're just missing the point.
Oh, that is next level. It's trippy. Like weed, is already bad enough, but when they start to control like psychedelics and mushrooms, or really whatever psychedelic, that just starts to go real deep into your brain and can really change a lot of stuff for you.
Yeah,
It's not good for people like that to be controlling those kind of situations.
it's all about intention. These substances. I had Dennis McKenna on the podcast recently, and so we were talking about their evolution. Now that they're trying to create the high without the high as well. So they're trying to get the benefit of psychedelics, as in the days afterwards, without the experience of tripping. And anyone that's tripped can tell you that is the healing part of it, or the majority part of the healing of it. That's where you face your demons, you manifest, the things you didn't face as a child. You can end up in some ways actually seeing, like, not necessarily hallucinating, but sort of facing monsters, creatures that are, parents, there are authoritative figures, they are trauma that you haven't addressed, that in that opportunity you can, overcome and work through. And they're powerful personal experiences. And yeah, I worry about people taking those substances for the first time amongst people that have never taken those substances. I often say, like, you wouldn't get a tattoo from a tattooist that doesn't have tattoos. So in the same way, why are we buying weed from people that don't smoke weed? Why are we then going to go and allow someone to inject them with ketamine who's never taken ketamine? It doesn't, a lot of this just doesn't make sense. It's, as you were saying before, like, we can self-regulate, we can self-govern. Guess what? We've been doing that for decades. Do you know what I mean? We just need to be protected in law, to be accepted that we are a culture that does this. We're almost a religion. We believe in this plant. We believe in the spirit of it. We celebrate it. We have sacrament. We have traditions, even like rolling, etc. Like, we should be a protected class. We are one of the largest and probably that might be hyperbole, one of the largest non-protected groups in the world are cannabis consumers. We're tens of, if not hundreds of millions strong. Yet we're prejudiced in the majority of countries around the world just for the way we smell, for the way our eyes look. Do you know what I mean? How is this not a form of racism? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's as far as you can take it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy.
We love weed so much. We will fight to the death.
Front line.
But that's it, man. And this is the thing. So one of the reasons I kind of started this podcast was to be able to have these conversations. During lockdown, I wasn't traveling. I wasn't able to do anything. And so I just wanted to sort of reconnect with people. And every week it is this sense of that vibrance, that fight, that venom almost of like, fuck you. We're going to fight this. There's hundreds, there should be at least 100 people I've had on this podcast that agree that something really needs to be done. And there are people from all walks of life, from all industry, inside of this, outside of this, that are starting to understand. And I think Germany's going to be the big test next year. If Germany ends up looking like California plus Canada on acid, I think the entirety of Europe is going to go, whoa, legalization is not what we want. So I think, very auspicious times, really, isn't it? It's as you say, it's exciting in some ways, still upsetting. I mean, I've had 3 mates pulled over and are going through current drug driving charges with cannabis at the minute. I've had a friend nearly raided, and so we're still actively at war. And actually, I suppose it's weird in the UK. The closer we get to legalization, it seems the harder the police are coming. Was this something you saw in California towards the start of '64? Was they were raiding more people the closer they got to actually signing legalization?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely,
for
yeah.
sure.
It seemed like a spike of, they went hard. They're like, okay, we're going to knock down as many people as we can before it transitions into this legal market where they're going to need as much money as they can to survive this transition.
Yeah, and they've been busting a lot of people the last few years, too, and they have the Google Maps, Google Earth situation that they can use the live camera feed now in I think if it's our county or if it's the state, I think it's the county by itself. They always had the ability to do this for quite a few years, I guess, and it kept getting voted against it. And then last year, the year before, they approved the use of them. So now they just are very good about finding the gardens and sending you a notice on your gate saying that you've been spotted with cannabis and you need to cut it down. And even with legal gardens, like with our garden, they were Google mapping us the location where the garden's at. We just started there this year. The guy that we're working with just bought the property last year, and they went to 2015, 16, and 17 Google map footage to see what the farm used to look like, and there was a couple trees that were where one of the sections of the garden was, and they saw that in 2017 the trees were cut. So then they now red flagged the garden all these years later because they just looking around at their house, looking at our Google map, searching the whole county.
See, what else can we find to try to
Even on less legal garden,
throw another wrench in there?
Who's trying? There's not a whole bunch of legal gardens trying to play the system and pay the money that it takes to do this, and they're like trying to knock us out.
It's ridiculous because you guys are paying more tax than most of the corporations in your state. You're paying tax on your feeds, on your water, on your electric. Do you know what I mean? It's an absurdity. So why then should you have to? I mean, I understand the licensing for it's about protecting and limiting the number of plants in circulation. I think South Park did a really good takedown of this with Randy. And when he starts going after the Colorado home growers because they're going to start cutting down his business. And so, yeah, it seems like that's what's happening. So I think the reason it's then got voted recently in your area is probably some of those legal farmers that are paying and are going, well, this is affecting us. They're listening to the propaganda that's being created by, the industry trade bodies and whatever else that are not your friend, folks. The trade bodies are not your friend. They are trade bodies. They're there for trade. You are not trade. You may be traded, but they're not there to help you. I'll say that for any region of the world that I'm looking at right now with cannabis. It's scary how many of them are built for business and not end consumer. Yet they will say all the right things and tell us all the right things, but they're destroying the businesses they go for the ones that don't fit their models. Do you know what I mean? So I imagine they're filling them full of shit and going, the reason that your farms and the reason that your cost per pound has gone so far down is all these illegal farms around you. If you give us more power to go after them and pay more money to us, we could go fuck up these farms for you. And how's that not a protection racket? The gangsters used to still do in some fucking cities,
Gangster. It's so pay to play right now. It's so cutthroat. It's like super Al Capone mode out here. They're bully. It's right at the brink, and pretty much they passed the brink. That's so many farmers are out this year. I think they said 60% of the farms didn't grow this year.
Wow.
And
that's crazy.
That do have farms, we cut back. There's only a few people maximizing their permit right now because there's no point to push it and spend all the time growing 1,000 pounds if you're only going to sell 200 pounds or whatever it would be.
Yeah, man,
that's crazy. See.
Yeah. Is it? I might be mixing it up. Was it? I think it's either California or Colorado. There's a company that had been pulled over a few times with armored trucks that they're having their cash now seized.
I've heard a couple things, but I don't know specifics. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the things I'm gonna dig around a bit more and figure out what's sort of going on there because somebody that sort of fed me some information. I'm not going to make the person public, but basically was stating that there seems to be the way that they're cutting out a few companies. The way that they seem to be cutting out a few companies is basically they're targeting their trucks. So when they're moving the cash, because obviously federally they can't bank it. And then they're seizing it under seizing it as a asset forfeiture. Sorry, couldn't quite get my words out there. Yeah. As a way of then, we're not going to stop you selling. We're not going to stop you growing. We're just going to take the money at the end of it. And it's just like, it's mental the way that it's sort of been set up. But so for you guys living there and actively being part of it for so long and watching it change through the different iterations of Prop 64 and 215, what would you guys like to see? Like what would be something if it just suddenly popped up tomorrow in California? They'd be like, that's the fucking model. That's what we need.
Really, like I really think for us in our lane that we've built in general, the best thing for people like us, or like what I think like D'Angelo was saying, the online thing, like if they could figure out a way where we could just sell cannabis online, even if it was strictly only in California right now until something changes with the federal side, if we could distribute our own flower, like before with 215, it was us on the farm driving the flower to the club, doing the talking, picking up the money, doing meet and greets and everything. Now we can't do anything. We have to set the farm and we can't drive it out of there. We have to have the distribution company come to the farm to pick it up. They have to take it and finish it. It's very lucky if you have someone that's cool enough to let you see the whole process. You almost don't even get to see your weed until it's in the clubs again. and they're the ones taking it to the clubs. Like with the distributor that we had, we didn't get to see that much people that much. We didn't have a lot of meet and greets like we used to in 215. We didn't know the people that were actually selling our cannabis. So it's like we're cut out of the circle the way that the permit system is. So if we could get it back to where we could actually take our weed to the clubs ourselves, or just skip that and go online, or both, really would be nice to work with the people that you want to work with personally, and then be able to do it yourself would be huge. And I don't know how hard that would be. It doesn't seem too much harder than it already is. It's so hard to control the plant, and the metrics thing, like I was saying before, is there's so many loopholes, and it's so hard to keep track of stuff. They have too much information coming in. There's just way too much to keep track of. So they're never gonna be able to keep track of it the way they want to anyways, unless they get down to 10 people left. That's a big reason I think they like to do this too, because it cuts down on their work time. If there's only 10 farms that are all own every farm together, it all gets consolidated in the books and the way everything gets done. But I know that, or I just feel like it's so already overcomplicated in general. We might as well just let us do online, keep track of our sales through a PayPal situation or whatever you keep track of your accounting with. Do your thing. That would be huge to just go independent and not need the circle.
Yeah, I mean, if you get some like mobile testing, so again, you had testers turn up to the farm, because that is odd to me, because you put the love in, you do all of the work. Yeah, a good breeder knows if you fuck up your drying and curing, you fucked your crop. Like it's such a vital point for the process of it transferring from a plant into the bud, into that form. And so many people fuck it up by, being greedy, by wanting it too fast, cutting too early, by drying too quick, by you're damaging the overall product. So then to have it taken away, I almost felt like the image in my head was like a cow and its calf being taken away. And I felt that sense of loss almost as you were describing it. It was weird because that's my baby. Why are you taking, what are you doing to her? Why can't I see what you're doing to her? Do you know what I mean? That is, anytime you create shadows and darkness deliberately, I think we should be wary. Anytime you create obfuscation of the truth and it's not transparent and just straightforward. And look, I grew this there. I cut it there. We dried it over here. Then we jarred it there, and then you're buying it there.
Yeah,
like touring the place. Like again with wine vineyards and stuff, you can go and see the grapes and walk the trails and all the rest of it. And I think for a lot of and growing numbers of people, that's important. They're starting to be aware that because of cannabis, especially as a bioremediator, she picks up everything from the ground. Anything that is in that soil, she accumulates. And especially in concentrates now, as they become ever more sort of popular. I think is California now joined Washington in calling for banning of certain high potency of extracts.
I don't know. I don't know for sure.
I think it was. I might be again because of the way my brain works. I'm reading the C, so it's either Colorado or California in my head.
Limit the.
In fact, now I've said it. I think it is Colorado. Yeah, they're trying to limit the total THC. And again, it's just that. Why would you stop when people want that product? In the same way that you can still buy absinthe, but you then have to. It's a bit harder to get than just your 6-pack of beer. So, but you don't then criminalize it, because obviously then all you'll do is create, an illegal market of absinthe. And this is
exactly
entirely all they're doing. It's almost that they're getting down to what they can do. They're like, all right, we've got our gardeners that can make 5 flowers. They can have that. That'll do. It's about 20%. Yeah, that's what the market will be. So we'll restrict it.
I don't know how to do that. So that's not cool. Don't do that.
yeah. It's the same like FECO. FECO is another one, full extract cannabis oil. That you're not really seeing in any of these legalized markets. Yet they're all talking about the medicinal benefits of cannabis, yet the diluted full extract oil of itself is super powerful. Yet nobody anywhere in these legal regions really wants to have that conversation. It's as soon as it's gone legal, it's the conversation almost has to be about, it's about having fun. It's about you enjoy it. You just, it'll get you this high, and we're not having those other conversations of the potential, benefits of it. And it just feels a bit, weird that they've kind of cut the plant in half, or in their estimation, going, oh, well, this is medical marijuana, as it is termed in the States, and then this is your recreational cannabis. So if you just want to get fucked up, but if you want to get better from cannabis, you have to come to us and we'll pay you and we'll get you on this special cannabis. Yeah, it's all just cannabis. You know, they're doing the same in the UK now they're trying to make medical cannabis a term. And it's just not, it's an oxymoron. It doesn't make sense in the language because you use cannabis medicinally. So, do you know what I mean? So it creates a perfect marketing gimmick, because now they've convinced the Meta and other social media platforms that hashtag medical cannabis is about medical and safe and patients. And so it's all within that business realm. So it's all the business marketing advertising of they're getting them new patients. Yet there's no conversation of the actual patients or the people themselves going, well, here's what I've grown and I use this. And do you know what I mean? Because that's then banned. Yeah. So they're using this language to kind of create these narrow avenues. And it seems that the main casualty in this, to me, is FECO, which I've been taking on and off for over a decade. In terms of a supplement, it is the best prophylactic that we should all be using, especially in a world where now, I don't know what the statistics are in the States, but in the UK, it's 1 in 2 people will now get cancer in their lifetime. Wow. And as we've just had the conversation before about cannabis and cancer, why would we again then not be pushing as a society? Everybody should be taking FECO, a couple of drops a day. That's all it needs. 10 mil solution, couple of drops a day. That's nothing. It's not going to get you off your brain. It's not going to interfere with driving. But it is going to help your health a hell of a lot over the long term.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
Daniel's little one's crying in the background.
Oh, bless. Yeah, new father, aren't you? Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm aware of time actually as well. I didn't realize I've talked your ear off for so long there, guys. I think we'll round that up.
Good, yeah.
Sweet.
A good conversation and
much needed to talk about. Yeah.
I told OD, I said, when I forget who first told us about you, and it was a long time ago. So it was like, it's been a long time coming. And then when I checked your podcast out, I'm like, we got to get this. We got to talk with this dude. He's super cool. He's very insightful and knows a lot of stuff.
I appreciate it. I think something I know will have pushed you, because she did with Patrick King as well. I'm desperate to get Soil King on soon as well. I think it was Sandra Lepp, Eddie's widow.
Yes, that is who it was. Yep.
Yeah, and she was a wonderful conversation. Again, I've got an affinity for California, for the cannabis industry there, because it's so almost antithetical to what is presented as California to the rest of the world. And when I kind of went to the north and experienced it, I was like, it's like Northern England. Obviously, the weather's a hell of a lot better. But in terms of the ideology and the people, we just want to live alone. We just want to be self-sufficient, build our own communities, look after ourselves, take care of our own problems. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I appreciate this conversation. And, wish you both all the best with, obviously, the new child and music and fighting, hopefully, what's going to be the demise of Prop 64 pretty soon.
Yeah, going through the ropes right now, just bouncing back and forth, navigating.
Trying to stand our ground.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it up, brothers. Keep it up. Like I said, I'm going to superimpose a few images from your garden over this video just to show people the trees that you guys actually grow, because they're quite impressive.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, brother.
Oh, yeah. We appreciate it.
No worries. Well, I'll let you guys bounce. I'll do some housekeeping and say goodbye and whatnot. And we'll speak soon.
Okay, yeah. And then just send me the link when everything's done so we can share it, and we'll talk real soon.
Yeah, brother. Thanks for having us.
Man. You too. Peace and love, guys. Catch you later. I think you guys might have to leave because I can't find where the exit button is.
Okay.
Do this every week.
There it is.
All right.
Okay,
peace.
We'll talk
Bye.
to you soon.
Yeah, man. Peace.
There we go, folks. I will figure out this technology one of these fucking days. That was the guys from Mendo Dope. I enjoyed that conversation. I love hearing about Mendocino as a spot. It's so unique. If you haven't had the opportunity, I really suggest trying to get out to Northern California. I'd preface that over LA and all the rest of it, but that's my prerogative and my inclination there. But yeah, we had a really good conversation about sort of the industry. I hope you got sort of some insight into them as musicians. I'll share some links below to their YouTube and whatnot, so you can check out not just their music, but their videos as well. They really put a lot into it. They represent the culture quite hard, as you've obviously just seen. And yeah, the good bunch of guys, and I thoroughly fucking enjoyed that conversation, and I hope you guys did too. So if you did, please do like, share, subscribe, all that good shit. Hit that little thing. I can't remember which way it is. It's down on one of the sides. Press the button. Press it. Thank you. So yeah, we'll be back next week with somebody, I don't know who, but it'll be good and you'll enjoy it. But yeah, check us out on patreon.com/Simpa Life, where for less than a cup of coffee a week, you can help me keep the lights on this little project. Do check us out on all social media platforms at Simpa Life, and I will be relaunching the website very soon, so keep your eyes peeled. All right, peace and love, folks. Catch you next week. Yo, how you doing, folks? Welcome to bollocks. Immediately forgot number 95. We literally just said it. Oh, it's been